Goodman. Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton is set to suspend her presidential campaign and endorse Senator Barack Obama this weekend. In a letter issued last night, Clinton announced plans to hold an event in Washington Saturday to thank her supporters and express her support for Obama and party unity. Several prominent Clinton supporters are now pushing for Obama to select Clinton as his running mate. But former President Jimmy Carter has publicly warned against what some Democrats are calling the dream ticket.
I think it'd be the worst mistake that could be made. I'm on the outside. I'm not involved in the internal affairs of the Democratic Party at all. But I think that would just accumulate the negative aspects of both candidates.
On Wednesday, Obama named former President John F. Kennedy's daughter, Caroline Kennedy, to be part of a three-person team to lead his vice president search committee. The other two are former Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder and Washington insider Jim Johnson. On his first day as the Democrats' presumptive nominee, Senator Barack Obama traveled to Washington to address AIPAC, the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Now, let me be clear. Israel's security is sacrosanct. It is non-negotiable. The Palestinians need a state. The Palestinians need a state that is contiguous and cohesive, and that allows them to prosper. But any agreement with the Palestinian people must preserve Israel's identity as a Jewish state with secure, recognized, defensible borders. And Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
Al Jazeera reports Obama's comments appalled many Palestinians who see occupied East Jerusalem as part of a future Palestinian state. Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat said, quote, "This is the worst thing to happen to us since 1967. He's given ammunition to extremists across the region," he said. Here in this country, independent presidential candidate Ralph Nader criticized Obama for not mentioning the humanitarian disaster in Gaza caused by the Israeli blockade. Hamas spokesperson Sami Abu Zuhri also criticized Obama's speech.
These statements assure that there is total agreement between the two American parties, the Democratic and the Republican, on support for the Israeli occupation at the expense of the rights of Arabs and Palestinian interests. And these statements slash any hope in any change in the American foreign policy toward the Arab-Israeli conflict.
During his speech at AIPAC, Senator Obama also discussed the situation with Iran.
We will also use all elements of American power to pressure Iran. I will do everything in my power to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Everything in my power to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Everything.
On the campaign trail, Senator John McCain accused Obama of being naive for his stance on Iran.
My friends, they are developing nuclear weapons. Also, what is totally unsatisfactory is that the Iranians are manufacturing and shipping into Iraq the most lethal explosive devices that are killing young Americans. That's not acceptable. And Senator Obama wants to sit down without any precondition across the table and negotiate with this individual. My friends, that's not right, and that's naive. And that shows a lack of experience and a lack of judgment.
But during his speech before AIPAC, Obama defended his call for diplomacy.
Contrary to the claims of some, I have no interest in sitting down with our adversaries just for the sake of talking. But as President of the United States, I would be willing to lead tough and principled diplomacy with the appropriate Iranian leaders at a time and place of my choosing, if and only if it can advance the interests of the United States. That is my position. I want it to be absolutely clear.
In other campaign news, Antoine Tony Rezko, a former top fundraiser for Obama, has been found guilty of 16 felony corruption counts, including wire and mail fraud, money laundering, and aiding and abetting bribery. The Chicago developer was accused of influence peddling in Illinois state politics. Obama was unconnected to the criminal case. The Independent of London's reporting a secret deal is being negotiated in Baghdad that would perpetuate the U.S. military occupation of Iraq indefinitely, regardless of the outcome of the presidential election in November. Patrick Coburn reports the deal would allow the U.S. to keep 50 military bases and give legal immunity for U.S. troops and contractors. American negotiators are also demanding the right to carry out arrests, control Iraq's airspace, and conduct military activities in Iraq without consulting the Baghdad government. Critics in Iraq say the plan will destabilize Iraq's position in the Middle East and lay the basis for unending conflict in their country. The Independent reports President Bush is determined to force the Iraqi government to sign the so-called strategic alliance without modifications by the end of next month. The private military contractor Blackwater is expected to begin holding training sessions today at a new facility in San Diego, California, just blocks from the Mexico border. On Wednesday, a federal judge ruled Blackwater could open its new 61,000-square-foot center, despite attempts by San Diego officials to stall the plan. Blackwater was accused of secretly setting up the border facility by applying for city permits under the names of affiliated companies. In news from Africa, the chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court has implicated top Sudanese officials in a series of recent attacks in Darfur. Luis Moreno Ocampo said the whole state apparatus can be linked to crimes against humanity. Sudan's ambassador to the UN called the report fictitious and vicious. U.S. food policy is coming under criticism in Rome at the UN Emergency Summit on Food. The Los Angeles Times reports Bush administration officials have found themselves on the defensive on a wide range of policies, from biofuel production to genetic engineering to farm subsidies. Delegates have clashed over how much blame can be assigned to biofuels, such as ethanol, for the meteoric rise in food prices. Many nations and aid agencies contend too much food is ending up in fuel tanks and not on dinner tables, deepening a threat of global starvation. World Environment Day is being marked around the world today. It comes as 4 countries are competing to become the first nation to go entirely carbon neutral. Iceland, Norway, Costa Rica, and New Zealand are all attempting to reduce their net emissions of greenhouse gases to zero. Jeanette Fitzsimmons of the Green Party in New Zealand said great progress has already been made.
Our electricity system is nearly 70% renewable now, mainly from hydro, but with some geothermal and increasingly a little bit of wind. We have a goal, a government goal, to raise that to 90% renewable by 2025.
Meanwhile, Reuters is reporting the United States will announce next month that it cannot meet an international goal of making big cuts in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. Chief U.S. climate negotiator Harlan Watson said, quote, "It's frankly not doable for us." In other environmental news, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has declared California has fallen officially into drought for the first time since 1991. California has suffered its driest spring in 88 years. A federal appeals court has upheld the conviction of the Cuban Five, but vacated the sentences of 3 of the men. The 5 Cuban nationals were arrested in 1998 and convicted of spying for the Cuban government. They maintain they were sent to the United States to monitor violent exile groups plotting to overthrow Fidel Castro. On Wednesday, the judges vacated the life terms of 2 of the men and the 19-year sentence of another after concluding their sentences were improperly configured because no top-secret information was gathered or transmitted. The National Committee to Free the Cuban Five denounced the decision to uphold the convictions. Gloria La Riva said, quote, "The 5 men are not guilty of any crime. They were saving lives by stopping terrorism. They never had weapons. They never posed any threat to the people of the United States." The former foreign minister of Nicaragua's Sandinista government has been elected president of the United Nations General Assembly. The Reverend Miguel Descoto Brockman is a longtime critic of the United States. In his inaugural address at the UN, Miguel Descoto condemned the, quote, "scourge of war among member states and acts of aggression such as those occurring in Iraq and Afghanistan." Israel is continuing to come under pressure for its decision to build 800 new homes in a settlement outside East Jerusalem. On Wednesday, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said the settlement expansion threatens any future Israeli-Palestinian peace talks.
إننا مع السلام الشامل والعادل We are for a just and comprehensive peace, but peace and security cannot be achieved by guns of occupation and bulldozing of settlements. The Israeli decision to annex Jerusalem and build settlements in it, and the West Bank, and building the racist separation wall, are null and void, and peace cannot be established on that basis.
Massachusetts authorities have sued H&R Block, alleging its mortgage unit discriminated against Black and Latino borrowers and escalated a foreclosure crisis in the state. The lawsuit is the first by a state in the current crisis to accuse a subprime mortgage lender of civil rights violations. The complaint says H&R Block's Option 1 unit charged Black and Latino borrowers higher points and fees to close their loans than similarly situated white borrowers. The Centers for Disease Control has awarded an $11 million contract to a company headed by a former Bush cabinet official to track the health of thousands of workers who worked at Ground Zero following the 9/11 attacks. The company, Logistics Health, is headed by former Secretary of Health and Human Services Tommy Thompson. Thompson's previously been criticized for largely ignoring the health risks facing Ground Zero workers. Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney said, quote, "It's ironic that former HHS Secretary Tommy Thompson's firm won the contract to